Hey,
Hey guys, welcome to this episode.
we're going to take the big 200 out and see what it can do on some pretty easy trails around here. We're going up Charouleau Gap Road. We're not doing the whole trail. We're going to head up towards the chute, which we did in the FJ40 video you may have seen not too long ago.
Yep.
It's got some good step ups, a couple of really steep spots, plenty of articulation spots for this truck. Nothing too tight because I don't want to pinstripe the truck yet. We've already done a little bit,
already.
but before we really do it badly, I want to keep it clean for a couple more weeks. But all we've done to the truck right now is a 2-inch lift. We've got 34-inch tires, and that's really it. So it's pretty stock 200 series, but we did get a chance to wheel it completely stock, and then with just a lift, and now with the tires, it should make a little bit of an improvement.
Yeah.
So we're gonna leave the tires fairly aired up, about 35 PSI, so just a bit down from road pressure, and we'll see how it does.
Yeah, so hopefully the weather holds out on us. It's a little sprinkly today.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes.
Come on.
Hey there, I'm Kelsey, that's Tim, and this is the story of our adventure. Life is fleeting, and we want to squeeze every bit out of it. We are wandering the world, so home is a bit of a moving target for us. We love finding the random, the remote, and sharing it all with you. So subscribe to get lost with us and hopefully find some inspiration to go after your own dreams.
So I'm going down to 35 PSI. Definitely not very low. It's just, I want to take a little pressure out of the tires from street pressure, but I kind of want to see how the truck does in sort of street setup. So right now I've been running these tires at like 45 to 48 PSI on the road, and I just don't like wheeling with tires at their full street pressure too often. You're more likely to get chunks. The tire's just not very pliable or flexible. So at 35, it's certainly not aired down, but I wanted to do a little bit just to make it a little bit better, but I really want to see how it wheels when it's still got quite a bit of air in it. All right, so we're not on like a sort of Baja flying along off-road trail. We're really on more of a, I wouldn't call it rock crawling. That's definitely overstating it. But Charouleau Gap Trail is one of these trails that you're going to be crawling up steps and that sort of thing. So for me, first things first, I'm going in a low range. As soon as we go in a low range, it sometimes takes a little bit of time. I've noticed with the 200 and previous trucks with the electronic servo for low range, if the truck is warm and the fluid in the transfer case is warm, it seems to work better. If you try, like when we've test driven cars, including this one, if you try to go low range or lock the center diff right away when it just hasn't moved at all and it's still sitting there, sometimes it's a bit sticky, which is a little scary because you're not sure if it's broken or not. But if you're looking at a new truck, drive it a bit, then try it. Maybe it'll work. Okay, so we're in low range. We've been using it so much now, almost daily, every other day. We've been going in a low range, playing with something, crawling up something. So it's working a lot faster now as it gets more use. So I always do that. The other is RSCA, the vehicle stability control. If you hold that down, you'll get a light on the dash. It says RSCA off. And I just don't want any airbags blowing up in our face, so I'm doing that. There is a traction control button, and if you hit it in high range, you'll see the car swerving saying you've shut off the traction control. It's never fully shut offable, I don't think, but in low range, it just goes off.
Yeah.
So there's no need to hit the button. If you're in high range, you need to hit the button. Now, the only extra sort of thing I have left in the bag of tricks in this truck, because we don't have any lockers besides the center diff lock, is the center diff lock. So right now, because it's so easy to turn this truck with the center open, so right now we're running, it depends on which expert you're talking to. Some people call this all-wheel drive, sometimes people call it full-time four-wheel drive, but with the center diff unlocked, the truck's just going to turn so much easier because it's not evenly splitting the torque front to rear. So as you go around a corner, all four tires can move a slightly different distance. So it's really nice, drives really good. And then as soon as we're actually crawling up something, you're always going to want to try and remember to hit that center diff lock button. Sometimes you'll forget, and if you are struggling to get up something, just take a second and look at all your buttons, all your toys, all your gizmos. Yeah, what do I have on right now? 35 psi is what I went down to, which is not really aired down.
Yeah.
But man, is it smoother, huh?
It's
Can you
so
feel the
much better.
difference?
Yeah, we had a pretty high tire pressure, not like overly high, but for getting good mileage on the road.
Well, the tire place also mounts them, and then they always throw them on so high. So we were at like 52 psi, which is, I think, too high. And we lowered that to like 47,
it makes
46. That made a big difference.
Yeah.
And that was just our new on the highway, on the road pressure. And now we're at 35, and man, just that 10 psi makes all the difference with these big tires.
Yeah.
So these are 34 inches in diameter and 11 inches in width. So they're sort of a tall skinny, I would say.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. So
they
if you
look
have
really
to,
good.
yeah, they look really good. They fit the truck.
Once we have to lift it, they really made it look better.
And I just think that for 17s, it's a nice size tire, because only place we rubbed, fully stuffing, you know, to the bump stops, front and rear, is in the front. And that's if you're turning the wheel at all, that plastic fender piece in front of the tire.
Yeah.
Really thin, easy to trim.
I'll show you a video of what we trimmed, because we just trimmed a little bit to not so that the wheels wouldn't rub when we're turning. And so far we haven't done this trail yet, but it was pretty good at
Okay, so right now we're going through sort of like, we used to call them elephant tracks, giant ditches essentially, where they're perfectly spaced. They tend to happen like that from people trying to get up them and spin tires. And so sort of like moguls when you're skiing, they naturally develop sort of across from each other. You'll have a high point, a low point, and then a high point, a low point alternating. And that'll flex your suspension out and cause you to lose traction if you either don't have lockers, a ton of wheel travel, or traction control. So this truck is using traction control, of course, since it doesn't have front and rear lockers. But I've been super impressed with this truck already. The KDSS is amazing. I love that there's essentially no electronics. I've been reading up on it more, and I'm certainly no expert on KDSS. We've gotten to play with it at all the expos and all the training many, many times. Yeah. But the different generations are a bit different too. I had A-Track on my 2001 4Runner. That I love that truck pictured here. Great truck. But it was such an early form of A-Track. One day, you know, probably I knocked a sensor off in the mud or in Mexico. Never worked again. And when it did work, it was great with the stock diameter tires. Because it's calculating and doing math as that tire is spinning in the air, saying, aha, we've noticed it's spinning, we'll put the brakes onto it. But it was so slow and kind of archaic, even at the time, that as soon as I went to larger diameter tires, it had a tough time realizing that tire was spinning. Because of course, one rotation of the bigger tire is a lot more distance than with the stock size tires.
And we've already noticed that a little bit with the different size tires on here. It's not a huge difference, but you definitely notice that it takes a little bit longer to figure itself out.
Yeah, totally. And you know, so I always say, like, everything we do to our trucks, there's a plus and a minus. There's always a minus though. I think it's really easy to believe everything we do to the truck is only an improvement. But the tires is a good example. You know, acceleration, braking, miles per gallon, all of that is hurt by bigger diameter tires. And then the one that's also hurt is, I mean, you're putting more stress on the CV joints and the axles because it's a larger diameter thing with more leverage you have to turn. I haven't really heard of 200 series guys blowing out CVs or breaking axles like in a lighter duty Toyota or lighter duty IFS truck, so that's really good. But you're still putting more stress on all of it. But the biggest difference we've noticed is that A-Track is it's just a wee bit dumber now, right? Because it's going, wait a minute, your tire is barely spun. And in reality, because there's such big tires now, we've actually been waiting for it for a couple seconds instead of it sort of being instantaneous.
And then the bonuses, obviously, for us outweighed some of those negatives. Getting a bit more ground clearance, being able to air down your tires further to actually get more traction when you need it.
Get that
and
flotation
a much more comfortable ride.
Much more comfortable ride. Looks really good too.
It does look good.
But you're always trying to judge, like, okay, am I only doing this for the looks, or do I get some real benefits? And if there's some other great excuses, then I don't mind doing things that look good on a truck. I just can't do things that are only looks, like leaving the Rock Warrior. These are the wheels we have. They're TRD Rock Warrior. They're silly name, but they're Toyota forged alloy wheels, which is good. They're very strong. Forged wheels are strong and light. And so at 21.5 pounds, without the beadlock ring, that's a fake beadlock ring, they're really lightweight. And so I really wanted those wheels because I couldn't find anything else in a 17 that was as light, and there's a few that are close, but they cost a ton of money.
Yeah.
So to me, why not get the Toyota ones with the correct back spacing that work well with this truck? But I just couldn't leave the ring on, because to me, it's like knowing that it's not functional, knowing that it adds, I think it's over a pound per wheel, but don't quote me on that. It adds weight.
It was
however much it is.
Not an incredible amount of weight, but I was shocked at how much weight they actually added when we did weigh it.
Yeah.
Doesn't the Sonoran gold look good in the Sonoran desert? I love it. It's such a good looking truck.
A little more on the KDSS. You know, for those of you that don't know, it's a hydraulic system. So there's fluid moving throughout a bunch of what look like sort of brake lines throughout the suspension of the truck. And the way they're routed and engineered, if you're turning a corner on pavement or off-road, it won't allow the inside tires to droop, right? Because that's essentially what it's doing when a truck leans. Like, let's say you're turning right, the truck leans, those inside tires droop and the truck leans away from them. It resists that, so it acts like a sway bar, really holding you in place, saying, no, we're not gonna let this truck lean. So it feels very sporty on road and feels very safe, I'd say.
Yes.
Compared to trucks I've owned like Goose, where I got rid of all the sway bars.
Which again, like we talked about, is the positive negative effect, right? It's much better off-road because he has a lot more articulation, but then on-road you get a lot of that lean.
Yeah.
So you can't really have the best of both worlds, but KDSS
is kind of the best of both worlds. I mean, like anything, there's positives and negatives to it, but I love that this truck on like an RTI ramp, that's not what this truck's really about. It's not a rock crawler. It'll never be, in my opinion. But on an RTI ramp, the exact same truck as this, which is the Lexus LX 570, articulates a bit less than this truck. And they're the same truck, right? One just has KDSS, and the other one just has normal suspension with the, what's their system called? I can't remember now. When I was looking at it, I know all about it. That. But it's an electronic system with that lifts the suspension or lowers the suspension. It works really, really well. It's not air based, so it doesn't like blow out like an old airbag like suspensions of the past. It's a really good system, but I was interesting to note that KDSS, because it almost pushes the drooping tire down, does a bit better on an RTI ramp and in certain articulating situations. So what I'm talking about there is when one tire or two tires on opposing sides want to droop, it allows it. In fact, it like pushes it down. Yeah, so the way this fluid works is if the whole truck's trying to lean, it resists it. And if just one tire is starting to droop, it'll actually help it and push it and not resist it at all. And so right now we're going through again some of these little elephant tracks, and I'm always amazed how much wheel travel this thing has.
Yeah.
It's IFS, so the front's never gonna have that much unless you try and do a long travel kit, which that's a whole nother bag of worms. And I've had that on trucks. I love it. I love the Total Chaos setup, but it's so extreme that as soon as you go long travel, you're gonna spend immense tens of thousands of dollars probably, if I'm honest, at least 10,000, chasing all the other issues. Okay, the front's wider than the rear. Do I widen the rear axle? Do I run wheel spacers? Do I just leave it? Now I need fiberglass fenders for the tires to tie, etc., etc. So for what it is, this truck really does have a lot of articulation. It's no 80 series, but like right now that we've aired down, man, the tires took away any of that harshness that I think is sort of from KDSS actually. So here's maybe a negative of KDSS. We're going up. Is that because it resists that rocking side to side or cornering, that choppy stuff when you're going over, we sometimes call it like cabbage or baby heads.
Size rocks.
Yeah. Baby heads is a little morbid, but you know, you get what I'm talking about. That stuff that really shakes you to death, but it's not hard off-roading. It's just frustrating.
Just annoying.
That stuff, the sway bars are sort of engaged, not letting the truck move. And so you'll see us pitching back and forth a little bit right now.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the negative of it, is that at slow speeds off-road, it sort of is resisting the truck pitching along, which is what it's supposed to do. It's just in Goose or in an 80 series, that loosey-goosey suspension is actually kind of nice because you're just Cadillacing along. But I'll take that little negative, I think, because it's not bad. And I would say the tires killed a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So just having a bigger tire that's aired down and is a little more cushy now doesn't feel so pitchy back and forth.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. It's a little bit different ride than Tonto. If you guys have not seen that video, we're doing the same trail that we did in this video.
You can watch that video.
I'll put it here. Oh, little Tonto.
All that massive wheel travel.
Yeah, it's quite a different experience. Much quieter. My seat is heated, which is really nice today because it's kind of chilly, and it's very quiet.
It is very quiet. And you know, when we're doing long days mapping or long days trying to get somewhere or Baja or whatever, a truck like this or an 80, when it seals up and you're able to just knock out smooth mile after mile, you cover so much more ground. But actually, I think it was right at this spot during the FJ40 video, I said, you're not going very fast, but I don't care. But you know, what I love about this truck is I notice when we're on the same trails we've done in an 80 series or something plush like that, I see so much more because this is our pace. You could try and go faster than this, but you just rattle the truck and yourself to death. And so you just slow down, bounce over it, and you have time to look out the window, you pick your line, and then you just set on it, and you know, I love this. So
he's so enjoyable, even with all the rattles and roughness.
So if you have a Troopy, or if you have an FJ40 or 45 or something like leaf sprung based, it's not that bad because you just go slow, but you're having a great time.
Well, I think those two vehicles, Tonto and then this truck, they're so opposite that you really enjoy each one because
they complement each other really well.
Yeah.
And you know, like right now we had a couple hours, and so we're heading up this trail, and
water's running pretty good.
Water's running pretty good. So I don't mess around in any water in case it's sort of you know, quicksandy or whatnot. So I'm gonna lock the center diff. This is literally a 2-inch deep sandy wash, so it's not the depth I'm worrying about. I'm only locking the center diff in case it's quicksand. And when we go in, I realize, uh-oh, we're sinking and I gotta get hard on the throttle. And it's fine, of course. But you know, I don't want to be then trying to get the center diff and that little electronic motor to lock in while I'm going, I need to stay on the throttle to get out of this. But should I let off so that thing engages and we have full 4-wheel drive? So I never mess around with that. Engage it beforehand. You can undo it on the other side. I'm actually going to leave it engaged because we're starting to go up to where we're going to start climbing some steps. So now we've got low range, RSCA off. So that's the stability control. And I believe, and I could be wrong, it has something to do with the airbag sensitivity or whatever. So we have that off, and now we have the center diff locked as well. So we're as sort of using the toys as we can on this 200 series. We could certainly air down more. That would be sort of the next step for
if we were
the situation. Suspension-wise, these Dobyns have been doing great. If I was aired down further, it wouldn't shake me quite so much on this.
I have to say, at high speeds, high speeds off-road. We were in Mexico, and it was amazing. It was so comfortable. It just took everything, soaked it all up, and it was really fun. Really, really fun. Really fun.
We caught air quite a few times, and you know, with a truck that you're still sort of testing out, it was a little bit like, is anything gonna make a bad noise? And that suspension and the truck in general handled it so well that we started realizing we can sort of treat this a little like I used to my Tacoma, not with the long travel, but pre-long travel, sort of treat it, I don't know, sort of roughly, right? As long as you're not bottoming out harshly, as long as you're using the wheel travel you have and you're not slamming through it and feeling any bottoming out, you're within sort of its specs, right? And so we just started going quicker and quicker out on the race course to get to the race car to fuel them up. And as long as there was no one around and it felt safe, we were flying, and it was really fun. So right now I'm just using the gear shifter to select between first and second gear. We're in second right now because it's just a bumpy, I'd call it more of a road. And then when an obstacle comes up, I can drop it into first gear. If we didn't mention it earlier, that's another thing, of course, we screw up a little bit by putting bigger tires on. We effectively gear it for faster speeds, which is the opposite of what you want when you're trying to go over obstacles. So it's still really good though, I found. Automatic transmissions with a torque converter act like a little bit lower gearing than a manual transmission. So it's kind of nice to have that benefit again. Whereas with a manual, when you're in first gear with the clutch let out, that's as slow as you can go essentially. One thing I want to mention is this truck has fly-by-wire throttle, and I hate that. Now it can be great. I know you can remap it, and the guys in Australia, you always see on the Australia YouTube channels, they'll have different mapping software for the throttle control. But what I see in the videos with 200 series a lot is people bouncing through stuff, and as they're bouncing, you see one of the tires sort of chirp because his foot is sort of floating above the throttle pedal and inputting throttle.
Yep.
And then by the time it realizes that electronic signal has hit the engine, and then the internal combustion engine has to rev up a little bit, it's chirped a tire. And then he's, of course, let off. And then the next bump forces him to kind of hit the throttle. And so you see some really jerky driving with trucks with an electric throttle control.
Yep.
And with this truck, my biggest issue so far has been finding the perfect wedging of my leg and knee against the center tunnel, the transmission tunnel, to brace it. So right now I have a good brace going with sort of my shin against just below where the low range dial is.
Yeah.
And now I've got pretty good control on the throttle, and there's no accidental.
Yeah. A lot of times with older trucks, it's more narrow down there by your feet, and so you can actually have your foot on the gas pedal and also on kind of that side wall there, so that you have a bit of traction, I guess you'd say, and you can brace it that way. This truck, it's so roomy down there that, like Tim was saying, you have to kind of do it more with your knee up above, because your foot is just going to be basically off the gas pedal if you're trying to scoot it over to the wall. Yeah,
and if you feel like your foot is floating above it, try lowering the seat too. So it's fun to sit up really high. It's a high truck. I love the visibility in the electronic seats. You can just raise the seat up and see more. But if you lower it down, your whole leg feels more planted and more stable. So try lowering your seat if you're having trouble with sort of accidentally giving it throttle as you bounce through things. One of the things I'm trying to do in going super slow, like when you see that almost ridiculous level of low speed, is make sure we're not scraping the body panels. And the best way for me to do that is to go really slowly, because as the suspension compresses, you lose some ground clearance. But if I climb stuff or step off of stuff very slowly, I'm keeping most of my ground clearance intact as I do it, which is really nice. Right to the next step up. Unfortunately, Kelsey's walking a lot right now just because we're constantly climbing up little step ups, and she's trying to get the shot. Okay, so I'm going to go into the manual shift in first gear. It's not going to try and shift out of first, but call me old school or whatever. But I do like being able to force it into first gear and just know that it's not going to do anything silly like shift. Now we're going so slow it wouldn't. But if on the top of this obstacle we gained 2 or 3 miles per hour as we come over the lip, I would hate for it to shift on me. So it's forced in first. Beautiful. This thing does so well. Oh, one other footnote, the side steps are still on, so a bit of a risk leaving them on for something like this. These rocks are all just tall enough, and certainly they're not going to give.
Yeah, they're big jam boulders.
Yeah, and so we left the side steps on just because it looked pretty good with them on for now, and we've just been doing other stuff. but certainly for wheeling, for mapping work, all the stuff we're planning on doing, they got to go.
Yeah.
We're considering putting on some sliders because this is such a wide truck and we're not lifting it that much.
Yeah.
That the sides are going to kind of hang low. And although it's not a rock crawling truck, I normally wouldn't put sliders on.
Yeah.
But there are some lightweight ones out there. We could build our own lightweight ones just to protect the rocker panels of the truck.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll probably do is skid plates. And on IFS trucks, I do find it's kind of nice because you've got the oil pan and all that hanging down right there. On solid axle trucks, the solid axle sort of is right about where all that is.
Yep.
And ends up protecting it quite a bit unless you're doing rock crawling. But on this truck, I think I'm probably gonna do skid plates, but we may go do some mapping work for a little while and then see the state of the skid plate. And if we're scratching it, dinging it, you know, scraping it, then I'm definitely gonna install some. If we find that we're able to do trails like this all day and not really have any oopsies,
yeah,
then no big deal. And at least if we have an oopsie, we try and do it slowly so you don't rip out your oil pan. I'd much rather, you know, rip some plastic, dent some plastic, or even just hear that it's rubbed.
Yeah.
That's enough for me to know, okay, you know, that was a mistake on my part. I didn't pick a good line or whatever.
That's one other thing to note when we're sort of off-roading in a, not an extreme trail, but a slightly more extreme trail. We do, unless it's pouring, have the windows down just enough so that you can kind of hear everything that's going on outside.
Yeah. And if you're getting spotted through something too, we've done that so many times where you're trying to help someone else through an obstacle and they've got everything buttoned up and you're like, hey,
you can't
crack
hear
your
me.
windows so you can hear anything. You can hear if some bystander goes, oh my God, and yells, stop, because they see something like your hub is falling apart and your wheels falling off or whatever the situation is. It's really good to know what's going on with your vehicle.
It's
so
that extra sensory experience.
We'll do this granite slab. So I want to take you guys up this. It's just a giant granite slab.
Hop out.
It's nice and steep. Okay.
I'll show you how steep, because I'll get out and show you.
Yep. When you're going through a big V like I currently am, it's really easy to give it enough throttle to get rolling and get the front tires going. And that same amount is way too much, and then the rear will kind of slap into the ground. So I like left foot braking, so as the front tires start making progress up the hill and the sort of shift in weight happens, you can stop it and control it. I'm gonna need Kelsey to tell me how it's looking. That was freaking amazing, actually. Good job, buddy. He is the golden goose. We can call him Ned. We can call him Blanche, Devereaux. But I think he's the golden goose. I'm proud of him.
It never ever looks steep on camera or as steep as it is in real life. That was really steep.
I gotta say, that was super impressive. This thing is so heavy. Now ours is light compared to, you know, most built 200s.
Yeah.
But that is the kind of reason why I don't want it to become heavy. Just even an auxiliary tank and that extra couple 100 pounds makes all the difference, and just hooked up and went right up the side of that. But
yeah, that was steep.
I don't know what percentage grade that was, but certainly more than the old 40 I'm willing to put it through. It can do it. It's more carburation. It, you know, doesn't always like that angle. I think that was the
limit of our current approach and departure angles.
Yeah, I heard the hitch just touch. I heard it
barely. I mean, you had barely clearance, just both, you know, front and rear.
Awesome. And we're almost up to the chute, so we're so close. Why not go and show it to you guys?
Yeah. Beautiful up here.
Cool, we're at the chute. Okay. So this is the chute. As you see, fairly gnarly.
Here, I'll go in it for so you can see the scale.
Now the line is you sort of walk this crack, but if you slip into it this way, body damage and no way to get out there. And if you slip into it this way, body damage, and then you're being pulled back. So the other way is this right here, these two tracks. And then here you have to transition to going over this way, and you're gonna get tippy with your right tire up here, your left tire down here. And again, you're looking down at this to your left. So I've never come up it in anything I've owned. I'm totally okay with admitting that. I don't know if my mic's picking that up, but ton of water flowing from the mountains. Beautiful.
It's a new sport called off-road backing up. Tim's already very good at it. Just like that, back down the hill we go. Even though it's not a loop trail right now because it's washed out in the middle, it is such a nice trail to come up. It's just a little bit challenging, so that's fun. Beautiful up here, and especially today. It's a really nice day. Sprinkling at times, but nice and cool. And I don't know, the colors in the desert when it's a little bit rainy are just so pretty, and it smells good. Exhaust. The rain has arrived.
Rain has arrived, and yeah, it's fun. So we are finishing up our little trail run of the day. The other thing I noticed wheeling is how much better the front suspension was. So the upper arm, it's not like you're massively, drastically changing your suspension, but the added caster and the added wheel travel felt so much better. We both noticed it right after we put the front arm on and we did like a bumpy road, then we did a little bit more of a bumpy road, and we both thought, man, the jerkiness, this harshness that was in the front suspension that made me wondering if we needed to crank the coilovers down and actually get more wheel travel, down travel, is gone. And we do have quite a bit of down travel, so I was wondering what that was. I think it was just binding up possibly, but between the caster and the added wheel travel, that upper arm is amazing. I somewhat sarcastically was not a huge fan of upper arms, only because back in the day when they first started being made, it was sort of, because I was in the industry, it was sort of as another thing to sell people. And it did add caster and it did give you a tiny bit more wheel travel, but I wasn't sure how sold I was on it. And on my Tacoma pre-long travel and on my 4Runner, which were IFS trucks, both of them, I did the extended travel coilovers, but never did the upper arm. I was too cheap. And they worked great. On this truck, it's transformative. Honestly, it was a huge difference. So that upper arm on this truck, I think, is essential and has been awesome. I mean, the truck crawls through stuff much easier now than it did before. We'll put a link below for where you can go and buy those, but it's just one of those companies I've always had faith in, and we're super stoked to own a truck that they make something for again. And that's that.
That's it. It stopped raining for a little bit, but it was coming down pretty good for a while. I have to say, pretty impressed with this truck.
I'm super impressed. Like I said, there's something about when you use a truck and it surprises you that gives it more personality. I kind of understand more now what this truck likes and what it doesn't like.
Yeah.
And it's just remarkable. I mean, I can't believe a truck that looks that stock does that well. This is kind of my favorite stage of every truck I've ever owned, where you've done all the really useful mods, but none of the visual ones yet. So it still looks like sort of a stock-ish
But you feel
truck.
the improvements yourself,
Yeah, and it can do trails that people will think it has no business being on. Now, if we add bumpers and sliders and all that, it would make no difference in today's wheeling at all. And so they're good mods, but I do love it when it looks like this and can still do all of it. It's kind of like a sleeper in a sense of like a race car that, you know, it doesn't look like one. This doesn't look like it could wheel, but you might find it on some trails that you wouldn't expect it on. So I do love this truck. It's big. You can't get around that. It's crazy powerful, which
so
can be an
powerful.
inhibitor sometimes when you're trying to delicately crawl up stuff. But really, once you sort of figure it all out and get your leg wedged in there, the control is remarkable. I mean, I'm so impressed with it.
It'll just crawl over almost anything. It's, you know, it's
if it's got the
capable.
clearance,
Yep.
you know, it's got the front and rear departure angle to do it, it'll do it.
And you'll do it in comfort.
You'll do it in comfort with a warm butt on your seat heater. So, we're really falling in love with this truck. I didn't actually expect this. I knew it would be practical. I knew that I would like
more and more.
the sort of ease of it and the ability to do highway speeds. I know I'd like having an automatic, at least while we're running around the country just working. But I didn't think it would endear itself to me, and it's already starting to. So we're super stoked. Next up is a bed platform. We need to get that done, and we need to hit the road. So it's crunch time for us. A little more maintenance.
Yep, still a few things, but
hopefully you enjoy this little off-road trip.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments if you like stuff like this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I think that's it.
That's it. Tell a friend and other things. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.